तो आप बात करते हैं breaking the bias. Just imagine, had there been a male over here in your place, how long would they have taken to mute his mic? ठीक है ना? अब नहीं, these are the small sort of incidents in everyday life, in everyday office life. Cumulatively हम कभी इनको देखते नहीं हैं, we never analyze this thing. लेकिन जब आप what I'm going to talk about, although it says my opening remarks, I struggled that how do you make opening remarks about a thing which has been a consistently blind spot in our governance framework, and even a consistently blind spot. Although I've been here at the urban unit for a year and a half, even in our small little urban unit, we have never talked openly about it. Despite the fact that the urban unit has a significant and a very healthy, gender balance in the organization, but and it is in the public domain. It is a company which is in the public domain. But these issues, even at the level of the urban units, I think remain unaddressed. And these small little incidents like switching off the mic, I mean, I keep on noticing it. Let me give you an example from my own experience here at the urban unit. When I joined the urban unit, the person who sort of appointed me, I had an initial meeting with him, and he said that there has to be succession planning in the urban unit. I think the urban unit has always lacked an organizational structure which sort of gives it a sustainability or a consistency. But let me confess one thing on my part. In all these 1.5 years, and I've thought of who can succeed me in the urban unit. I mean, theoretically speaking, or hypothetically speaking, or sometimes even seriously thinking, I have never considered a female as a successor or as a chief executive officer of the urban unit. This is very, very strange. And it has never even come to, it has never come even as a discussion point outside the urban unit. Whenever we in the government think of appointing chief executive officers or project directors or in charge of project management units, despite having qualified women available with relevant experience also, somehow that discussion never takes place. It's always a man that we are thinking. That is how we are. That is the severity of the stereotype that we carry. Despite the fact that even if a person has had foreign exposure, when you come back to Pakistan, you tend to fall back into that iron cage, uh, and we've been unable to break the bias. Coming to your point, Sunny, I think this is really great that urban planning is a challenge, generally speaking, in Pakistan. But for 50% or for half the population, it is totally non-existent. So there is no gender sensitivity in urban planning. I here at the urban unit have regularly dealt with cases of public transport. Not everybody here at the urban unit is lucky enough to drive over to the urban unit or have somebody drop them to the urban unit. Most of our employees, the female employees, the younger ones, make recourse to public transport. And I've never discussed with them how do they manage. I have an official staff car, and sometimes even I feel stressed in traffic in Lahore. But coming on your own on public transport from great distances in the city, and I know a couple of you, when you talk about increase in your increments, the biggest sort of a roadblock which is holding back women in urban planning and architecture from joining firms, etc., are actually the transport costs from their place of residence to their work of employment. This is, this is something that nobody has really looked at. And these transport costs are so significant that they sometimes become the critical factor in actually deciding whether to continue working for an organization or whether to leave that organization. And that should not be happening in any professional organization. I'm not speaking of the urban unit, but I'm speaking generally of organizations which are a blend of females and males and which are professional organizations. And I think their urban planning, especially the transport sector, we have a role to play on it. And generally urban planning, that how do we urban plan? We urban plan from a male perspective. So the distances traveled across cities will always be determined and decided by some male somewhere. It will not be a female that who would advocate lesser traveling time or shorter distances. It would be that yes, even if it is a distance, it can be a longer distance and we can bear it. So that type of consultation which takes place during the formulation of a master plan or an urban plan, I wonder how much presence do we have of actual women who experience the city the way working women do here in Lahore. And I think that is one thing that we are actually missing. I don't want to hog this entire seminar, but I must give my congratulations to the communication team. Initially, when they floated the idea, one more confession, I was very, very reluctant to participate. I don't have much to say on this, and then they made me the opening speaker for it. So one point to note is that always select the opening speaker who has really something to say. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the material that I have available and turn this around into some sort of an interesting discussion. So the material which I have available is actually the program of this webinar. And think of what Sani said: empowered women for empowered urban Pakistan. We never talk about it. Interesting. So if urban unit wants to be at the cutting edge of things, you need to have space to make these type of discussions. And while we might not claim that we will be able to transform this thing next year, but this is the push which is required to make those incremental transformation over a period of time. Gender inclusion in technology. I never thought of it, that is technology in any way agonistic as far as gender is concerned. That is a very, very interesting point that we really need to explore. Even in solid waste management, ex-urban unit Nasira Hassan is going to talk about breaking the rigid gender type serving the solid waste management sector in Pakistan. This is really, really important. I lived in the USA for 7 years. There, when it comes to their solid waste management sector, you have females who are not actually doing the collection on the street. They are also managers. They are also running solid waste operation in their municipalities. So it's 50% of the workforce, and who knows better? And again, this is a stereotype. Again, I must confess how naturally I am able to stereotype. I'm saying who knows better about waste collection than women. Again, this is a stereotype, and these things, come so naturally here to men that I think it is affecting the entire planning direction and our priority agenda. And I really, feel that this the International Women Day. This is my first participation over it, and I really like the agenda of this seminar, and I wish I had more time, because then we are talking about media literacy and women's role in society. So just see the scope of it. Then Fawzia Qureshi is going to talk about women in architecture. Again, a field which has flourished as far as professional women is concerned, but we've really not looked at women in architecture in some sort of a framework. Women in entrepreneurship in cities, the time is now. Yes, we are struggling here in the Punjab government to talk about entrepreneurship in general, But again, we do not know anything about women entrepreneurship as far as urban areas is concerned. And from education to economic empowerment, this is what we are talking about, from primary education to your tertiary education, and then what happens afterward. This is a whole life cycle that we are talking about. So when it comes to women, we really have to look at it from the very start to the very end. So we are not trying to pick pieces of their life, or portions of their life. We are trying to even look at it much more holistically, much more strategically. And rethinking public transport in Pakistan, gender inclusivity and safety in public transport. This was a last minute entry, but I think all of you are very sensitive to this issue. Any person, who has actually traveled on public transport here in Lahore, I think would have a lot to say. And a question and answer session of only 15 minutes. Come on, Mumtaz. I mean, this one really deserved a question and answer session of 1 hour, but anyway, we can live with 15 minutes. And the final bookend of it is again the chief operating officer of the urban unit, who happens to be a man. So the opening remarks are going to be made by a man, and the closing remarks are going to be made by made by the man. And in between there are very important facets, unexplored areas which will be sandwiched. So I would like to open up this space, and I would like to welcome everybody. I apologize that as per my tradition, I've been conventionally a person who has never been punctual here at the urban unit. But I came here, relatively speaking, on time, but then there were some important phone calls that I had to take, and that I could not avoid. I'm sorry that I sort of, gate crashed into this webinar after the first speaker. But these are my remarks, and I wish you all the best. And I wish I had more time, but Memuna, I really have to push off for another meeting which I have at the Planning and Development Department. Thank you very much.